Hello, Facebook. This is not the usual time that I do broadcasts, but I'm literally just jumping on because of the fact that I've had several people ask me the same question, and I've got a minute to just hop on and just address it because it seems to be something that's going on in a lot of people's hearts, a lot of people's spirits. So good to see you there, Ella. Just as you log on, just let me know where you're watching from because it's always a joy to connect with you. And those of you that are catching us later at the prayer meeting, looking forward to praying with you. So hi all. So the question that's been asked is this: what do you do when God's not speaking? What do you do when God's not speaking? Or when God's not talking? And that's a good question, isn't it? How do you deal with that moment when you have a situation where there seems to be apparent silence? And I mean, I've lost count how many times people have come to me and said, "Oh, God doesn't talk to me. I don't hear God," and various different variations of that term. And probably the most famous Bible verse on this is John 10:27, which you all know really well. My sheep hear my voice. I know them and they follow me. My sheep hear my voice. I know them and they follow me. So that word, their voice, is really important to understand because when it comes to us actually being able to communicate with God and understand how God communicates to us, if we've got a wrong perception of what that word, their voice, is, it's going to result in us missing when God is communicating to us because we only have a particular frame that we think he's going to speak from. So if you actually look in a lexicon and you look at the word voice, the word voice in the Greek lexicon is the word we get the word phone from. So it is literally phone. Now, when you look at the root meaning of that word, the root meaning of the word is this, some of which you'll go, well, of course it means that, but just listen for a minute because I'm going somewhere with this. A sound or a tone, a voice, speech, words, language, or a tongue. Now, just listen to that last statement, language. Now, think about this. Read the text again. My sheep know my language. So what I want to say to you is sometimes when you don't think you're hearing God's voice, that doesn't mean God has stopped speaking. So sometimes God stops talking, but carries on speaking. So the question that we need to ask ourselves is not, Lord, why aren't you speaking to me? Or Lord, why aren't you communicating to me? We don't start from that preface. We start from the preface of God is always communicating with me. God is always communing with me. So the question we ask is, Lord, how are you speaking to me right now? So in silence, God speaks. In the absence of God's voice, God speaks. When you're not hearing God in the way that he normally talks to you, God's speaking. Sometimes the reason why we're not hearing what God is saying is because we're not in the place where God is saying it. And we need to shift position. And that shift of position can be many different things. It can be a shift of position of mindset. It can be a shift of position of posture and expectation. It can be a shift of position, literally, physically. You see this in Jeremiah 18. The Lord speaks to Jeremiah and says to Jeremiah, go to the potter's house and I will give you a message. So he hears the initial guidance, but then he has to go to the place where God is speaking. So he had to leave where he was and go to the place where God's voice was. So the issue is this, not God, why aren't you speaking to me? That is a wrong perception. In actual fact, that kind of language comes from an orphaned heart. And we need to put that to bed. We need to kill it. We need to kill this dynamic of, why have you forsaken me? Why are you far away from me? Those statements are not legal statements for New Testament believers. Why? Because Jesus said, I will never leave you and I will never forsake you. So what that therefore means is God is always present. God is always communicating. So the issue is Lord, how are you communicating to me right now? And sometimes the way God communicates to you is in silence. And you just need to just rest in that place. And the level of peace and security that we have in him is expressed in the level of our trust. And sometimes we just need to come to that place of stillness that we go, even though I don't hear his voice like I would normally, I trust him in the silence. So sometimes the reason why there is no, if you like, no clear guidance is because you're in a time where the Lord is testing you. He's just saying, do you trust me? Or are you going to panic and you're going to shout at me, talk to me, talk to me, talk to me, talk to me? How many of you noticed you can't make God talk to you? The Lord, the enemy would love you to believe, there it is, the enemy would love you to believe that God has left you. But Jesus said, I will never leave you. I will never forsake you. So be in the place of deep confidence that regardless of circumstance, regardless of what's going on, be in a place of peace, knowing that the proximity of God never changes, ever. Whether he's speaking or whether he's silent, whether he's giving clear guidance or whether he's got you in a place that you're waiting. If you're in a place of waiting, God is speaking. If you're in a place that he's downloading loads of revelation, God is speaking. If he's got you in that place where you're just having to trust in spite of circumstance, God is speaking. When Jesus was in the boat, sleeping in the bow of the boat, he was speaking. What was he saying? We're going over to the other side. Now the disciples could be Jesus, or they could be what the disciples did, and they panicked in the midst of the environment. And Jesus was trying to teach them a model. Do you remember what he said to them? I only do what I see the Father doing. So Jesus was at perfect peace. So we need to be at perfect peace as well. We need to be in that place where we just trust him. We've got people trying to phone me. Sorry, just a minute. There you go. We need to be in that place where we are in that place of peace, just like Jesus in the midst of the storm. God had already spoke. Sorry, people. God had already spoke. So Jesus just wanted to be in that place where he knew what the Father was saying. He rested in the Father, and therefore, in the midst of the storm, Jesus asleep was Jesus speaking. So if Jesus can sleep in the storm, so can you. Why? Because God said, I'll never leave you nor forsake you. Amen. God bless you. I'm obviously going to have to take this call, but I hope that's encouraged you. Remember, God's always communicating. See you later.